Quick, what do these three figures have in common? That was a trick question. None of these answers are correct. Mainly because I found this guy in Google Images, and I have no idea who he is. Discounting that, it's hard to argue that Gandhi and MLK aren't some of the most influential civil rights leaders in history. Undoubtedly, their efforts drastically shifted the courses of their nations. But there's one particular writer that significantly influenced the ideologies of both of these leaders.
It's not this guy. I hate this guy.
In actuality, I'm referring to Henry David Thoreau, and in particular, his famous essay, Civil Disobedience. Since being published in 1849, Thoreau's work has been critical in the formation of nonviolent resistance movements all across the globe and their push for civil justice. Despite this, Civil Disobedience, alongside dozens of other influential works, have often been the target of political censorship. Even today, similar sentiments still exist and pose a threat to many works of literature. But before we jump into the impacts of civil disobedience, what's the essay actually about? Thoreau actually wrote Civil Disobedience after he refused to pay his taxes and was forced to spend a night in jail. However, unlike myself, Thoreau's refusal to pay his taxes wasn't just for the love of the game. Rather, it was a deliberate act of resistance against the Mexican-American War and the institution of slavery, both of which he believed to be unjust. The concept of nonviolent protest, according to Thoreau, was centered around denying allegiance to an unjust state by refusing to cooperate with it entirely, which included not paying taxes. For example, as a form of nonviolent protest against College Board while taking the SAT, I cried and then threw up. One of Thoreau's most controversial arguments was his critique against voting to achieve reform. This guy wasn't fascist, I swear. Thoreau reasoned that the opinion of the majority was not naturally the most just, and was in fact prone to oppress minorities if doing so benefited them. Therefore, voting to achieve civil justice was virtually relying on a dice roll of public opinion, and was thus insufficient. Instead, Thoreau thought if you really wanted to achieve change, you needed to protest by all means possible, hence refusing to pay your taxes, even if that meant punishment by the state.
Wait, did someone say not following American laws?
You don't think? By the way it's looking, Dwight, I'd say he's a dirty, collectivizing, commie. Commie! Yeah, go get him, Dwight.
By the 1950s, America was at the peak of the Second Red Scare. Spearheaded by Senator Joseph McCarthy, the Second Red Scare was accompanied by a great cultural push to ban any piece of media allegedly harboring communist sympathies. This included the obvious culprits like the Communist Manifesto or Das Kapital, but also encompassed many works that had no clear relation to communism. Indeed, many works were banned simply for being deemed subversive or un-American. For whom the bell tolls? Sure, hippie, keep on telling me war is bad. Banned! The Grapes of Wrath? Homeless people don't exist in America. That's fake news. Banned. Robin Hood? Nice try, Ivan. That's just a dirty socialist handing out welfare checks. Banned! Among this list of banned works was also Thoreau's Civil Disobedience, which is criticized for advocating for the disobeying of laws. Fortunately, the momentum to ban many of these books dissolved upon McCarthy's fall from grace in 1954. Moreover, despite the disregard for Civil Disobedience's value as a literary work during this period, the globe-reaching social impacts of the essay cannot be understated. Firstly, it's important to clarify that the two figures I alluded to earlier in this video, Gandhi and MLK, certainly did not base their entire philosophies off of Thoreau's writing. While Gandhi launched his civil resistance movement in South Africa in 1906, he only read Civil Disobedience in 1907. He probably didn't time travel, or he probably have a few more pressing things to talk about other than having read Civil Disobedience. Nonetheless, certain parts of Thoreau's writing certainly impressed both of these figures and intellectually validated their philosophies. Perhaps one of the most significant influences that Thoreau had on both Gandhi and MLK was the strong condemnation of inaction. The one thing Thoreau blamed the most for allowing slavery's perpetuation was apathy. People who, although recognized slavery was immoral, didn't care enough to do anything about it. For Gandhi and MLK, two men who initially witnessed a near-complete lack of press attention towards widespread discrimination, Thoreau's words must have been profound. They both recognized that the key to stopping oppression was not in fighting against the oppressors, but to rally the people who stood on the sidelines. In his autobiography, MLK wrote, "Here, in this courageous New Englander's refusal to pay his taxes and his choice of jail, rather than support a war that would spread slavery's territory into Mexico, I made my first contact with the theory of nonviolent resistance. I became convinced that non-cooperation with evil is as much a moral obligation as is cooperation with good." Evidently, aspects of Thoreau's civil disobedience were vital components in driving both MLK's and Gandhi's philosophies. Civil disobedience is just one example of a book that's faced pressure to be banned. Today, book banning is an issue that's still massively relevant. In 2024 through 2025, there were 6,870 titles that were taken off library shelves. Whether or not we choose to support these bans is up to us. But I'd like to say this. Solving cultural problems takes monumental effort. But literature is like a string of lamps, illuminating the path towards social change. When any of these lamps are shattered, the path becomes darker. What would be a brilliant path towards the future can quickly become a senseless, isolated series of dots. At the end of the day, we never know what might be the next book that propels us toward the future. It's probably not this one. We can ban this one.
Ocean man, take me by the hand.